Hi guys, Rick here. I just went to see a great movie last night. It's one of the best that I've seen in a long time. I want to tell you guys about it. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is the 10th film that Marvel's put out as part of their big Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just came out this week. It's friggin' amazing. It's really a great time. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot funnier, actually, than a lot of the films that came before it. Iron Man has a lot of comedy in there. Thor 2 had its weird slapstick sort of ending thing going on. But Guardians of the Galaxy has like a real focus on the comedy.
Who are you?
Star-Lord.
Who?
Well, Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
And it's something that we haven't really seen so much in Marvel yet. It's really refreshing. It's a nice way to sort of step outside of the usual, like, until now everything's been Iron Man or the Hulk or Thor, Captain America, just them. Every movie so far has been focused on at least one of them, if not more, plus, Hawkeye and Black Widow. But it's good to be able to step away from that, get kind of a fresh set of faces, a fresh story, something we haven't done before, and see it all kind of tie in. It's really interesting. It starts out, it's got the first cold open that they've ever done for one of these Marvel movies, too. It opens up in 1988. You see, a little bit of Peter Quill's backstory. And it sort of sets the tone for the entire movie, because 1988 is sort of where a lot of the lingo and a lot of the style of it is locked in. Like this is sort of like if Star Wars meets Firefly mixed with like every 80s, like the entire 80s decade, but like you get sort of a Spielbergy kind of feel to some of it. It's interesting. Like it doesn't feel retro in the way that oh god, I forget the name of the film. It was Spielberg produced it, but he wasn't really on set for it. I think it was like 8mm or something. No, not 8mm. It's the one with the trains and the aliens, his music. What's it called? There it is. It wasn't like retro in the same sense as that, and it also wasn't. It didn't feel like a remake of 80s movies like we've seen with Dredd and RoboCop and all of those. Like it felt fresh and it felt new. It also felt like it was part of the Marvel universe. It had just the right level of like snark and funny and also like serious dramatic moments. This was sort of their way of introducing all of the interspatial stuff into the Marvel universe. Because before we had Thor, where we had the Asgard and the Nine Realms and all of that, but it was a pretty shallow look at those. You got to the surface of a couple planets, and that's it. With the Avengers, we saw the Chitauri come in, and that was it. That was the only real glimpse of space we got. And then Thanos in his domain. As sort of a little piece there too. But here you actually see a lot of different planets. You see the conflict between the Kree and the Xandar people, and a peace treaty, and all of this craziness sort of coming undone, where with Ronan the Accuser deciding that he's done with this war. He's just going to destroy everyone in whatever way he can. And at first the plot is kind of heavy and confusing. They really lay it on thick at the beginning. You get a lot of planets really fast. You get a lot of backstory really fast. It's not an origin story, really. They don't spend a lot of time on origins like that. In the same way that Iron Man had its origin bit, Thor had its origin bit, Captain America had, a third of its movie was the origin bit. This one actually just basically says, here are these characters, they'll develop as they go, put them in one space, let them fight with each other, and then be a team, and then go and do their thing. So it's a cool change of pace for the Marvel movies. I kind of hope that if DC does the Justice League eventually, and even with Dawn of Justice, the one that's coming out in 2 years, I hope they don't spend too much time with origins. Like by the time it's the sequel to Man of Steel, so they should already have everything they need there. Everyone knows who Batman is, so that's really not a necessary one. Maybe a little bit of Wonder Woman backstory and a little bit of Cyborg backstory, a little bit, but like not too much. But I'm not talking about that. It's Guardians of the Galaxy. The characters are awesome. Chris Pratt does a great job as Peter Quill. He's sort of played up as this not as smart as Tony Stark, but also a little bit darker than Tony Stark. He takes more risks. He's a little bit more off the cuff. He plays it loose. He's also a criminal. He actively is stealing shit and getting in fights and all of that. It's kind of like if Tony Stark was a little bit younger and more naive and in space. So you get this sort of interesting vibe off of him, and Chris Pratt plays it perfectly. He does a great job. I don't think they could have really gotten anyone much better to play the role, so he fits in really perfectly. You have Bradley Cooper voices Rocket. Not Rocket Raccoon. They just call him Rocket. They actually address the fact that he doesn't he doesn't associate with like being a raccoon or being an animal or anything. He is a person. As far as he's concerned, he's not a lesser being or anything like that. He is a person. He's a being. He's on equal footing with everyone else. His character was a little bit. It wasn't super well developed, but you got enough. Like, he's there as sort of probably the darkest member of the five. Like, he's the least sympathetic of them to the plight that's going on. He's pretty well concerned about money for most of it and his own safety. What I like about Rocket is the CGI is really damn good. Like, you obviously while watching it, it's not a real raccoon there, but it's convincing CGI. There's interactions with Rocket that seem perfectly normal, and it seems like he's physically there doing all these things. So it's really impressive. On the other end of the spectrum is Groot, who, while he is an awesome character and he's completely adorable, which is the best part, his CGI is a lot less convincing. But when it comes to a character that can kind of grow and shrink pieces of himself and all that, you're not going to really go for a hyper realistic look for it. It's going to be it's going to be a little bit cartoony. It's going to be a little bit less realistic. You have Zoe Saldana is Gamora. She's really cool. She's got a lot of awesome action scenes, and what's interesting is, despite the fact that she probably has the most personal stake in what's going on in the story, she seems to develop the least. Like, she already knows what she needs and wants to do at the start of the movie, and by the end, not much has changed since then. But the way that things ended up in the movie, there's a lot of hooks for the sequel. And Marvel's already confirmed these guys aren't going to be involved with the Avengers 2. They're going to get their sequel in like 2 or 3 years, and then maybe be involved with the Avengers 3. So we know that there's more to that story. We know that there's more that's going to happen. So I think they're saving a lot more of her development for the next time around, when it's going to be a little bit more personally involved with her. The last member of the team, you got Batista as Drax. He's awesome. I was reading up about it. He apparently auditioned 6 or 7 times. He wanted this role more than anything that he's ever wanted in his life, and he wept when he actually heard the news that he had gotten it. You can tell that he really got into his character a lot. He's got these great quirks of his personality, or he doesn't have a huge personality, but what is there is really finely crafted. Every word that he speaks has purpose, and he feels less like a cartoon or like someone who just has quirks for the sake of it, than someone who no, this is how they work, this is what they believe, this is what they do. He doesn't really understand idioms. Actually, the whole team really doesn't get turns of phrase or idioms or anything like that. Peter Quill uses a lot of phrases and stuff. He'll do these, or he'll talk about someone with a stick up their butt, and they just don't get it. They just kind of go like, well, what do you mean? Why would I want to put a finger to their throat? Who's putting sticks up their butts? But it's really funny just to watch someone who's perpetually stuck in the 80s dealing with aliens, science and aliens and all that stuff.
What a bunch of a-holes.
The action scenes are really good. They change up the scope really well. One of the earliest scenes in the movie has them fighting each other, and then we've got a prison riot, but then by the end you've got this enormous space battle with literally thousands of ships, and it feels coherent. Like, it feels like they're part of one movie, and not, you're not flipping between like Pulp Fiction and Star Wars. It feels like it makes sense. It's awesome to be able to see a space movie. Like, it feels, if you saw Star Trek, they had this issue where they had these really epic space battles, but it was very just flashy and CGI. Like, it didn't feel real. It felt very wow them a lot with a lot of stuff flying in the face really fast. This one had a lot of that, but it also made sense too. There were ships flying in like squadrons and platoons and stuff, and they were, they had a goal. They were throwing up smoke screens to get around stuff, and it felt not only very realistic, but also very. It also felt very strategic. There was a lot more going in than like, oh, we'll just fly around and shoot stuff and maybe we'll win. There was a plan in mind. The team itself is really good because they feel like the Avengers in a lot of ways. It's actually really appropriate that these are the last guys we're going to see before Age of Ultron, because they sort of have this very Avengers vibe of having different purposes on the team. They have different specialties. They have sort of differing alliances with each other. But at the same time, while the Avengers kind of had general, like, they didn't really see eye to eye, and that's where a lot of their problems came from. For the Guardians of the Galaxy, their issue is they just fucking hate each other. They completely have different ideas in mind of what they're trying to accomplish. Like, they're doing the same thing for totally different reasons, and it comes to a head in a couple of places, and they really, like, lay into each other. The soundtrack is amazing. They do this awesome job of mixing what you would. So they kind of did the soundtrack in two parts. The first part, which was actually done before filming even started, is your standard not standard, but like it's the expected movie soundtrack. It's the space battle stuff. It's them walking around and fight scenes and stuff. That was done ahead of time so that when they were filming, they could actually play the music while stuff was going on to get them more into the moment, which is, I think, really cool and probably really hard to do, but presumably it's really effective. It sold it really well. The other half of the soundtrack is classic, like, 70s and 80s rock. A little bit of, I guess it's probably all 70s and 80s. I don't know when Hooked on a Feeling came out, but it must have been, late 80s or something. But you got Hooked on a Feeling, you got Ooh Child, there's Come and Get Your Love. There's a lot of, like, really classic feel-good rock songs in there, and it matches the tone really well. A lot of times it's coming out of headphones or like a tape deck or something, and I don't want to spoil. Hooked on a Feeling gets used perfectly in this movie, especially if you've watched the trailers. It drops into this, like, repetitive, like, bang, bang, with just action stuff playing everywhere. The way they used it in the movie is perfect, especially if you've seen that. Because, you have an expectation, and the way they play it up is excellent.
Take those headphones off right now!
I don't really know what else there is to say about the movie. It's really awesome. It's a great time. It's one of the most fun movies I've seen in a long time. It's on a kind of a different level from Captain America 2. That one is sort of like, if you're a fan of Marvel movies, you must see it. One, because it's just damn good. It's a powerful movie, but it also sort of changes the scope of the entire franchise. This one is probably the most entertaining movie that Marvel has done so far. So it's really a step up. I hope Ant-Man takes some cues from it in terms of how they do their comedy and their action. But it's nice to see, Thanos returns from the Avengers. He actually has some lines, which is cool. The Tesseract is featured really briefly, a quick, like, cameo. And the Ether as well. The Collector, all this stuff from Thor 2 is really good. And the stinger of this one is actually fucking hilarious. Just,
hey, whoa, spoilers! I haven't seen it yet.
Well, you saw the movie, right?
No.
You haven't. No. You haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy yet.
Well, no, it came out yesterday.
Well, I kind of wish you told me that before we started.
Well,
I don't want to spoil the stinger if you haven't seen it, because it's kind of, it's a big deal. Like, you've seen Thor 2 though, right? Because, like, I'm talking about the Collector and
Thor 2? No.
You don't know what the Collector is. You don't know, like, the Tesseract and the Ether, maybe?
I don't know what the Ether is. What's that?
Have you seen the Avengers?
Most of it.
Have you seen Iron Man?
What? No.
Okay. We're going to have to do something about this. Sorry, guys. We'll save that last bit for later, I guess. We're going to have to sit down and watch some Marvel movies, I think, John, if we want to keep this going. Yeah, we'll have to fix this. We'll to be continued.